Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to founder and Proactive Health Labs, Joy Stephensons-Laws. Joy Stephensons-Laws is founder and executive director of Proactive Health Labs, a national non-profit health education organization dedicated to ensure people have the information and tools they need to get and stay healthy. She's also the founder and managing partner of Stephenson Acquisition and Coleman, the healthcare industry premier litigation law firm. Ms. Stephenson-Laws is the author of Minerals, the Forgotten Nutrient, your secret weapon for getting and staying healthy. She's the honorary counsel of Jamaica in Los Angeles. Also, she has a few hobbies, which I absolutely love. And she says that she takes these hobbies just as serious as her work. For instance, she is a golf fanatic. She totally loves the sport because the principles that make you a good golfer are those the same that make you an effective business person, or yet better, a better person. The game of golf teaches you so many lessons, the most important of which is learning what you can control, which is how you play and accepting the outcome. Some other hobbies of hers include hiking, bowling, world games, video games, and traveling. And more recently, she's just resumed her interest in playing the piano. There you have it. Thank you so much, and welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Joy.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of fun talking about this subject this afternoon. So good going.
I love it. I love it. So how long have you been playing golf for?
About 20 years.
It's a very long time. I love it. I was actually, the other day, I looked at, I went for a walk and I saw the golf course and I was like, oh, that would be an interesting sport to get into.
I know it. I remember when I was growing up in Jamaica, and I would pass by the golfers at the resorts when we were driving by. And I said, there's absolutely no way anybody could get me to play a game like that, to chase a little ball around the course for 4 to 5 hours. Absolutely not. And it's funny, as I got older, I got addicted.
It's so funny. It does sound a bit ridiculous in a way when you say chasing a little ball around for 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's crazy because just from the outside looking in and not having played golf as a sport in, say, primary school, it's not something that, we would have done. So what happened was, as you got older and actually started to understand the game, you realize it's more than just chasing a ball. There's more to it. There's an art to it. There's skill levels. There's patience. There are mental issues. There's so many things that I'm so happy I started to play.
Yeah,
got through a lot of times.
and it's relaxing, people say.
It is, and you're outdoors, and now that, especially now during COVID, where you're forced to be out, not forced, it's better for you to be outside. I'm so happy I play golf because it gives me a chance to be active, but at the same time be a COVID-friendly sport. So there's lots of positives. So if you haven't started, you should.
Signing up tomorrow. I love it. I love it. So look, Joy, I've introduced you in introduction, and you've done so many things in your life. But what I wanted to get the audience to get a little bit more about you, and I wanted to find out what have been the key turning points in your life to get you to where you are now today.
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to say what I observed in my family. So I was born and raised in Jamaica. I came to the US when I was about 16 after high school. And one of the things I remember was just my mom taking medications, a lot of medications. She did whatever her doctor told her to do. I mean, she didn't even ask questions. She would come home with the medications, and she would say, and you'd say, well, what's that? Oh, I got this at the doctor today. And she took them religiously. Nobody explained side effects. Nobody explained alternatives to the meds. Nobody, it's just whatever my doctor tells me, I'm going to do. And unfortunately, she died fairly young. of a myriad of heart disease issues and hypertension, diabetes, the usual metabolic issues, and I saw that too with other relatives, and it got me to thinking that there had to be more to healthcare than what I grew up with. So, despite the fact that I started out being pre-med and ended up being a healthcare attorney, I didn't just do the work necessary to be an attorney. I wanted to learn more about the human body and see how I, as a consumer, a health consumer, could better take care of myself. So at least I could ask intelligent questions when I go to the doctor. At least I can know what he's talking about so that we can have that better discussion about how I should take care of myself. Because at the end of the day, it's my body. And I think I know better how my body functions so that I can explain it to someone so that they can better assist me how to take care of it. So I would say it's just experiences with family members, seeing what happened to them, how they died, the issues they had, and just saying, I don't think I will ever want that to happen to me in the future. And actually, one of the big points that I like to make is the fact that I have witnessed so many women going through menopause, as an example. And even as an employer, we had lots of talks in the office as, women would, they'd come and talk to you about their issues. And I can't sleep at night. I have all these hot flashes, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. and I would listen to them and said, I hope I never have to go through that. you know. And it was my goal not to have to experience the symptoms of menopause, literally. So that got me even more motivated to find out why is it that we go through menopause. Okay, I'm going to do my best not to do that by making sure that I stay balanced. Whatever that word balance means, if it means that I have to work out, exercise more, if it means that I have to make sure that my nutrients are balanced, if it means I'm going to learn to figure out what that means so that I'll never have to experience those miserable symptoms, because people had mental issues, they had, physical issues. You'd be sitting talking to them in the office and they would start sweating. And actually, I did succeed in going through menopause without having any symptoms. And so I think that's one of my greatest accomplishments personally, because I tried to stay balanced. I discovered magnesium, which was a huge help. So those are some of the key turning points in my life that have gotten me to where I am today. I know it works because I had none of those metabolic issues that my parents had. And I make sure that I'm proactive so that I don't have them. And it's kind of empowering to know that you can take steps to prevent these issues before they happen. And perhaps that's why I'm so motivated to talk about these issues. And that's why I wrote the book, because these are some of the things that affected me personally that I was able to overcome.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mum. It's always hard when it hits home, when it's so close, Talking about menopause, I've just gone through helping my mum with going through menopause, and she's loving me at the moment. Wasn't before when menopause hit in. I don't know about that, but now she is, and she's done absolutely amazing. Gone through the fact of, it's a whole lifestyle change, and us as women, we forget how much our body changes, how much our mind changes through the years, and we have cycles, and I'm so thankful for cycles because it allows us to connect. I feel like we have this blessing that we feel more connected, not more easier to connect to things because we are women and because we have these cycles.
Exactly. So true.
Yeah. So it's amazing, all of the key turning points in your life. And I understand that you said that you're an attorney. So so what do you do in regards to healthcare? How do you help individuals in that sense?
So as an attorney, I help hospitals. What many hospitals have the desire to help more patients, but many times they're unable to do as much as they would like to do because the patients cannot afford the treatment that they need. So what we do is work with hospitals to ensure that patients get the care they need and also be able to afford to pay for it by finding payers that will pay for the services that they're being charged for. So many times, for example, an insurance company will deny payment on a case because the services aren't medically necessary. In their opinion, the services aren't medically necessary, or they want to discharge the patient earlier, even though the patient is not ready for discharge. And that's where we intercede and we get them to do what's in the best interest of the patient. So that's from
Yeah.
a healthcare attorney perspective. And in doing so, we end up reviewing a ton of medical records as part of the process. And I learned so much from those medical records because you see the treatment, you see what's being offered, you see the patient, and sometimes you just shake your head and say, I wish you knew what to do before you got here, because you could have avoided so many issues had somebody just explained, how to take care of yourself as opposed to showing up at the ER with these issues. So that's where patient education comes in, and that's what one of the things I'm passionate about, because there's so many issues that can be avoided if the patient were educated from a healthcare perspective, not sophisticated education as in doctor, the medicalese kind of stuff, but if you have hypertension, how to take your hypertension reading at, high blood pressure reading at home, how to track it so that the one time you go to a doctor and they took your blood pressure while they were talking to you, and you were running up the stairs to get the appointment, you saw that blood pressure reading and they said, oops, you need to go on medication because your blood pressure is high. You could probably say, but it's not normally high because I take it at home. It's just high because I was late and I was running up the stairs and I'm talking to you right now and I'm not supposed to be talking to you. Can I just relax for a minute and go to the bathroom and empty my bladder so that I can be just a calmer for the appointment? Stuff like that. Just little things just to
I
be
love that. That is,
so that, yeah.
and you're so right. Like, for example, my grandma, she smokes, bless her soul. She's in her 80s and she would finish her smoke and then she would put on to measure her blood pressure. And I'm like, what are you doing? Your blood pressure is going to be through the roof. Exactly what you said, but this is the things that individuals aren't educated on. Like, if you run up the stairs, if you walk, if you smoke, if you talk about a stressful situation, if you're emotional, this is going to raise your blood pressure. So I love that you're doing that. That is amazing.
Yes. So there's just these little things that it's not, these are like sophisticated things as, you need to know the chemical composition of the medication or whatever it is. Nothing like that. Leave that for the experts. But there's information that we as consumers need to know in order to take care of ourselves that can go a long way in keeping us healthy. And I think it behooves us to do that and learn how we can do that. And that's why we even have the website, so that people can go on it, search for a particular topic, and we kind of break it down in layman's language so that they can understand the simple things that you can do to make sure that you stay healthy. And if you have to go to the doctor, for example, many times we get medications from the doctor or dentist, whoever, and we never ask, what the side effects are. We leave it up to when you go fill it at the pharmacy gives you a piece of paper that lists, in medicalese, a ton of side effects. It's like, and who reads that stuff, So those are some of the things that I think we need to know. Or if we're taking vitamins or minerals, do they interact with the medications? Or do the medications leach out or get rid of some of the nutrients that we have? Is it going to make us urinate more? So does that mean we have to drink more water? Recently I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and one of the things that you don't eat, you can't get to eat as much, because you can't chew for a little bit. And so I proceeded to drink chocolate malt, during that period. Well, can you believe that for the week that I drank mostly chocolate malts and had drinks, high protein drink, my cholesterol shot up during that period, that small window. My cholesterol is normally like 160, 170. It shot up to 230, okay? But I was aware when it shot up, but that I said, well, my diet has changed a little bit. It's going to go back to normal. When the doctor saw that, because I had my annual physical right after, she said, oh, okay, I was a little bit concerned that something was going on. Yeah. And of course, it went back down. But I knew that so that I could address it, and it's not a permanent issue, but no cause and effect was, at play here, because there are many people with high cholesterol and it's diet related. And they just have to know that that's something that they can address themselves, as opposed to taking drugs that can create other issues, because all drugs have side effects, even antibiotics. All drugs have side effects. And it's up to us to know what those side effects are so that we can adjust for them. So, for example, if you know that the drug you're taking is going to get rid of your body of vitamin B, then take more vitamin B or eat more vitamin B rich foods. So to make it work, so that you don't have the side effects of the lacking vitamin B. So these are some of the things that I think as consumers, we need to be aware of so that we can help ourselves. And if we're going to use medications, then use them wisely. Because I'm not a proponent of not taking medications. They need to be taken when they're necessary, but you need to know why you're taking them, what the side effects are, and if you have to supplement in any way to make them work better, then as a consumer, you should know that and not totally rely on your doctor, who may or may not tell you this information.
I couldn't agree more with you 100%. When I get people come in and they come with a stash of medication, I say, okay, so this one right here, what is it for? Oh, I take that at night. No. What is it for? I understand you take it at night, but what are you taking it for? Oh, one of them is for diabetes, the other one, and I'm like, no, but what's this one for? And it's exactly what you're talking about. If you're putting something in your body, and it's the same with food, what is that doing? It's for us. It's our responsibility to understand what that does to our body. Is it harming it? Is it benefiting it? What effect is it having it? But so I want to find out a little bit about, what does optimal health and success look like for you at the moment, Joy?
Right. So I guess let me start by relating it back to me. I don't think you can be successful without being healthy. And that's my personal belief. I don't care how much money you have. If you're not healthy, it means nothing, relatively speaking. So I've always equated success with health. Give you an example. One of the things we do as a law firm is we take tons of depositions and we go to court a lot. And as my staff knows, many times I'll be sitting across the table and I'll see opposing counsel. And if we're going into a long trial, I will do an assessment at that point as to how I'm going to handle the case based on what I see sitting across from me. Because if I see somebody who's smoking a lot, who's drinking a ton of coffee, who probably drinks a lot of alcohol, clearly out of shape, and we're going into a 2-week trial, I make certain assessments as to how I'm going to handle that case to perhaps create a little bit more stress so that he settles or she settles, just based on it from a health perspective. Because it's important that if you're going to represent your client, that you keep yourself in decent physical shape so that you can weather the storm of a long, stressful trial. So health and success, in my mind, goes hand in hand. And as it relates to optimal health, what is that? In my opinion, it means creating balance within the body. It's all about balancing what you eat and how you move, and balancing your mental health. And actually, what you eat and how you move affects your mental health, not only your physical health, but your mental health. And I don't think too many people realize that, because many people do physical activity because they want to look good. But looking good is the least of the issue. Mental health is, in my opinion, even a bigger issue because it drives you to do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do. And so you really cannot be truly successful if you're not healthy. or you don't have optimal health. Now, when I talk about balancing what you eat, um, we know that you need 7 basic nutrients to live categorically. You need water, or six, I'm sorry, 6 basic nutrients. You need water, fat, protein, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. Those are 6 broad categories of nutrients that everybody needs to eat and to live healthily. And they have to be balanced. For example, if we drink too much water, it's not good for us. You have to balance that. If you eat too much protein, it's not good. If you have too many vitamins, too much vitamin C, or too many, B, whatever it is, anything in excess or too little that has consequences. The same thing with fats. The same thing with carbs. Anything in excess or too little. So and each person is different. So you have to determine what that balance is, so that you can figure out what's right for you. And that's where the juggling act comes in, because the only way that you can know that you're in balance is not only how you feel, but to test for it, because sometimes you have no symptoms until it's too late. So you could be deficient in vitamin D and you feel okay for a good while, or what you think is okay for a good while, because you've never experienced what true wellness is. And then after a while, you realize, ouch, I have this huge issue. And then nobody really knows what's going on because nobody's testing for it. So from that perspective, what you put in your mouth has to be balanced, and you have to identify those foods that will give you the nutrients that you need to stay in balance. Recognizing, though, that as we age, our body's ability to absorb nutrients from food decreases. Not only do we wrinkle when we age, because that's obvious, we can see it, but our internal organs become less efficient. So people tend to forget about what they can't see. They see the wrinkles on their face and they might go to a plastic surgeon and say, I want to take these wrinkles out because I want to look younger. But they never think about, is my liver functioning as effectively, or is my stomach absorbing the stuff as effectively as it used to? Well, no, age decreases our ability to absorb food. So we have to give it some help as we get older. So whenever you hear talk about, you shouldn't worry about taking vitamins or, minerals or whatever it is, you can get it from food. That's not 100% true. You can get it from the food. You may not be able to absorb it, as a practical matter. And that's where you need to test, especially as you age, test to see what the levels are in your body and figure out a way and work with a competent medical professional to make sure that you're getting those nutrients in the right amounts that you need. And obviously for exercise, it's the same. You have to figure out what your balance is. I hate to go to a gym personally, because that structure I'm not capable of just incorporating in my daily life. So, but I'm active. So I'm always doing something, and I'll hike, I'll play golf, walk instead of taking the car. I'll make sure I stretch at home, etc. But that rigid routine of going to a gym, I just don't. I have a tough time with. But it's up to you to identify what it is that works for you, because you have to have some type of physical activity that you do to keep your body tuned.
Yeah, I like how you said at the start, going back at that, you as a business professional, for you to represent your clients, you need to be healthy. You need to be physically, mentally, emotionally healthy. So then you're able to represent that individual and get the best outcome for them. And I mean, if you're not, then it's kind of like when you're, like, I think about it when you're looking for an accountant, when you're looking for a lawyer, when you're looking for a marketing person, ask them those questions about what's marketing and what's law like, but also ask them, what do you do to be healthy? Get those questions in there. Like, what does optimal health look like for you, or success? Ask them, because they're representing you and they're working with your business. So I love that.
Exactly.
And I love that you said the balance. I love the balance. And the thing that you said that rings bells all the time is you may be eating the food, but what are you absorbing? I love that because everyone's like, I'm eating so many greens, I'm eating so
I
many
eat my fruits and
vegetables,
vegetables. Yes.
I'm eating
Yeah.
all that. But I say, okay, you're eating it, but what are you absorbing? And they look at me like, how am I supposed to know? Well, if you knew what optimal health is and what it feels like, exactly what you said, which many individuals don't, you'll know if you're absorbing it or not. So I love that. I love that. And this gives us an awesome leadway to talk about. And I'm so excited, which is one of the 6 things that you spoke about, which is minerals. And minerals are in many ways the unheralded and often forgotten heroes of keeping our bodies functioning at their best. While the nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats may be better known or well known than minerals, but they're equally as vital for helping us stay healthy. So to start off, let's get you to talk a little bit to us about minerals and in particular trace minerals. If you can just give us a 101 on that.
Sure. So as I said before, minerals is one of the 6 nutrients we need to stay healthy. And you're so correct in stating that many times we hear about vitamins. Who hasn't heard about vitamin C or B or, all those A and K, et cetera, or vitamin D? We hear a lot about vitamins. We hear a lot about carbs. We hear about fats. Protein, or who doesn't hear about proteins? But what struck me when I thought of writing the book with the doctors that we work with was nobody really talks about mineral. You hear about calcium a lot, because as you get older, they say calcium for strong bones, which is not even necessarily true, but we can get back to that. but we talk about calcium a lot, and you probably hear about iron. Women need iron, otherwise they'll get anemic. So those are 2 minerals that I think everybody has heard about. But there are so many other minerals that we need, and they play such an important role in our health that I figured I'll work with the doctors and research the area thoroughly to see what I could learn for myself in doing so. And of course, there are these trace minerals like zinc that you need them in smaller amounts, not as much as like you need magnesium or calcium, but they're still necessary to be aware of and make sure you have in the right amounts. And obviously, the same thing I said before, where if you have too much, you can have issues. So when we did the research, what I found out was that these minerals play a huge role in keeping you healthy and preventing chronic diseases such as hypertension, um, such as diabetes, things like depression. They play a huge role in all these illnesses or diseases. Give you an example. Hypertension, there are minerals that are relevant when it comes to hypertension to keep you healthy as it relates to that issue. Those minerals include magnesium, great for hypertension. In fact, it's a natural calcium blocker. And calcium blockers are one of the things that they prescribe for hypertension, because they're trying to get the arteries supple and not too stiff so that the blood can flow through and prevent hypertension. So that was interesting to find out, because I had a family history of hypertension and I didn't want to get hypertension. So obviously magnesium has become one of my favorite friends. Also, we did zinc, which is a trace mineral, and zinc is important for taste. It's important for smell. It's important for wound healing. One of the big issues is with nursing homes where you have older people. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to visit a nursing home where people have wounds that won't heal. Many times, this is a result of zinc deficiency, but nobody ever tests them for zinc deficiency. It never crossed their minds to test if these people are zinc deficient, and many are. So there's so many things we need to learn about minerals, and the next issue is, just as too little is bad, too much is not good either. So too much zinc can create issues. For example, it can reduce your copper levels if you have too much zinc. and you need copper for good immunity too. So there's so many things to know about minerals. I was surprised that more attention was not given to that nutrient before. And we learned so much about studies that were done. The book talks, we give all the studies that we read, all the studies that we found out, and that you can test for them as well. That there are companies out there that actually, or labs out there, that's all they do is test for minerals and other nutrients. And I'm sure many people don't know that, because when they go to their doctors, the doctor might test for calcium, because that's part of a routine. Part of the routine lab work is calcium. Or they might test for magnesium sometimes, but they look for the magnesium in the wrong place. So they're looking for serum magnesium, the magnesium you find in your blood and not in the cells. And if you look for magnesium in the right place, you're not going to know whether or not you're in balance. So it's knowing all these things and being aware of the critical role that mineral plays in keeping us healthy, and knowing that you have to be in balance. If you know that, then whenever you go to the doctor the next time and he gives you medications, you probably Google it. Say, these medications that I'm taking, let me see, what minerals do they leach out? Maybe that's why I'm feeling so tired whenever I take these meds. Maybe I need to talk to the doctor about what do I need to do to supplement more when I'm taking these medications. Because if you're low with these minerals, you can get depressed. Magnesium is a big one, because it affects your mood as well. It works, it has so many reactions in the body that's positive. So these are things that I think as a healthcare consumer, we should all educate ourselves about, because at the end of the day, it's all about us being healthy.
Yeah, well said. And it's interesting that most of us don't even know kind of what these trace minerals do in our body. And you touched upon zinc, you touched upon copper, calcium, magnesium, and so forth. Is there any one of those like iron, chromium, copper, zinc, iodine, manganese, selenium, any of those that you can maybe, or two that you can just give us a little bit of a rundown that you think is important for women or business women who are exhausted that they should have a look at?
Sure. Exhaustion, when it comes to iron as an example, as women, we need more iron than men, because every month we lose it. And, especially pre-menstruation, before we stop menstruating, we lose iron in our blood every single month. So we have to replace it. So if we don't replace it or make sure that we're optimal in iron, we're going to get tired, we're going to get exhausted, and our immune system may not function the way that it should. The other one that I think is really important, my favorite mineral, not that I can, not that all aren't important, but my favorite mineral is obviously magnesium, because I've used it to relieve soreness when I work out, for example, because it keeps me healthy and it helps me to be more mobile. I've used it to prevent depression. I've used it to help prevent hypertension. So magnesium is my all-time favorite mineral, but obviously there are tons of others. There's also copper, iodine, as a good example, also healthy. Keeps your thyroid in shape. They're all critical minerals that we need. The big issue is, what are we doing to ensure that we have them all in the right balance? And that's the biggest hurdle that I think many people face, because sometimes you ask somebody who goes to the doctor, I went to my doctor and my doctor did a blood test, and when you ask him what did he test for, he tests for everything. He tests for everything. I got all that stuff tested.
I love it. I love that. I love it because I can hear. I hear.
Yeah, I got all this stuff. So I said, "You want to show me what he did?" Oh, trust me, I did. I gave a bunch of blood, and he took a blood test, and they're hesitant to show it to you, but those that will, you point out, okay, what where are the minerals that are tested for here, and you see calcium, and that's it. Or potassium, they'll test for potassium sometimes. You see calcium and potassium, but nobody tests for zinc. Many doctors don't test for zinc. They don't test for they'll test for iron sometimes if they think it's warranted. If you already have symptoms that you might be iron deficient. But if you don't, they're not interested in finding out whether or not you're on the low side. It's just whether or not they're trying to rule out as something, So it's not for optimal health. It's to prevent. It's to treat sickness as opposed to prevent sickness. And they don't test for copper, manganese, none of those things. Chromium. Chromium for diabetics is huge because it helps with insulin control. They don't test for none of that stuff, but they can test whether or not you have diabetes, and there's some drugs for diabetes that they can give you. so they're testing to find out whether or not you have diabetes, so that they can prescribe, the drug to treat diabetes. But the test is never to determine whether or not you're likely to have diabetes because your chromium levels are low or your magnesium levels are low. And so I think once we understand why minerals are important, we'll understand why we need to test for it and not guess whether or not we have them in the right balance or wait until it's too late.
Yeah, I love that. And the same thing goes for thyroid studies. They see the thyroid and it's like, okay, well, have you checked iodine? Have we checked selenium? Have we checked iron? Have we checked all those things which are key for our thyroid to function, not just the thyroid? We check those things. Exactly what you said also. So it's interesting. So if an individual is, for example, let's say they're saying they're working hard at their business, they're totally exhausted, they're eating all those vegetables, they're eating salads every day because they're told salads are good, and they're still having fatigue or anything along those lines. How does an individual know if the things that they're intaking, that they're actually absorbing the right amount of trace minerals?
Right. So that's why you have to identify a lab that would test for those trace minerals. Because how else are you going to know what's wrong if you're not testing for it? And I guess that's where the logical side of me comes in, and where I had to ask so many questions. Because one thing they teach you in law school as an attorney is you need to get facts to support your opinion. And so if I'm feeling exhausted, my natural reaction is, I wonder what's missing in my diet. What is it that I'm missing? Not that I'm going to go drink some caffeine drink to give me energy to fix it temporarily, or take a pill to fix it temporarily. My question at that point, if I'm feeling, if I have a symptom of something, is what am I missing? And how do you know what you're missing? You go test. Get a comprehensive test to see what you might be missing. You can actually look at it and see that you're low in, for example, iodine. You can look at it and see that you're low in magnesium. There are tests that you can do that are indicators of these issues. So the testing is a critical part of staying balanced and staying healthy. And it can be a blood test. Sometimes you can test by urine, and sometimes even saliva. So it's up to us to identify those labs that will provide that service, and a doctor who utilizes the service, because you have quite a few doctors that will. And even traditional doctors have now realized the importance of working hand in hand with preventing illness as opposed to treating sickness. And so if you can test for these issues, then you'll know exactly what to do to supplement, however you supplement. If it's trying to eat the right foods, maybe you're not eating enough vegetables. Maybe there's a different way you can absorb the vegetables. Maybe put it in a smoothie, or maybe what you can do is get a liquid form of the vitamin, or I'm not sure if you're familiar with liposomes, where if you might not be able to absorb the vitamin in tablet form. So there's new technology where it makes it easier to absorb. Whatever you need to do, or you can get it injected. That's why you have IVs. So whatever you need to do to ensure that you have the right amount in the, of nutrients or minerals in your body, once you know it's missing, then you can do it.
Yeah, I like the facts that you said, that you run a test and there's facts in front of you. Okay, you're low in this, which links to this. What's next to do? It's just logic in a way,
Sure.
isn't it?
Yes, yes.
I love that, and not just going to be like, no one. I always say no one's ever deficient in coffee. Exactly what you said. You're not deficient in your coffee.
Crazy. We
And
feel the first thing we think of is, oh, I just can't get going. Let me go get some coffee. And at the same time, you're peeing out the nutrients in the body with the coffee. And you're not putting it back. And then you go drink more coffee and then you pee out more nutrients. And all of a sudden the tired becomes being tired. You go from being tired to being depressed. And then you go take some medications to, fix the depression, and then you can't sleep, and it's a nightmare. So it's really important that we think when it comes to our bodies, let's think through it logically to see how we can help ourselves, as opposed to going for that quick fix.
100%. So you mentioned some things like age. You mentioned coffee. What else would be some things that may be hindering our absorption of these minerals?
Sure. I'm sure you're aware that medications will prevent absorption or can prevent absorption of some minerals. The soil, that's a huge issue with soil depletion. Our soil is not as robust as as it could be. And as a result, if you plant fruits or veggies and the plants can't get the nutrient from the soil, then the plants or the veggies will not be as nutritious. I'm just trying to break it down in as simple terms as possible. And the other thing too is, if you overcook your food, you can kill the nutrients that are in the food. So you're eating it, but it's essentially nutrient free. It might taste good, but you may not have the nutrients that you need to have in the food. So these are all examples of things that will, reduce the nutrients that you absorb. Because if the nutrients aren't there in the first place, you might not be able to absorb it, obviously.
Yeah. So it's also the input of what we're actually eating. But then if we believe we're eating enough, it could be coffee, it could be age, it could be the food, where it's come from, it could be medication, so many other factors.
Yeah, it could be genetics as well. I'll give you an example. With myself, I did one of those genetic tests, and it turns out that I don't absorb vitamin C as well as other people. Even if I eat a ton of fruits and veggies, it's not going to make a difference. I do my vitamin C testing, and it will come back that I'm borderline, no matter how much I eat. And I have to have infusions to get my vitamin C level to optimal. Well, if I didn't do the test, I wouldn't know. And I probably would have had issues down the road as it relates to vitamin C deficiency, which affects so many people, even though they don't know it. People think because you don't have scurvy anymore, and that there's not vitamin C deficiency, but there are quite a few people with vitamin C deficiency. So it's all about testing to make sure that you have the right proportion of minerals in the right, as you age.
Yeah, I love that. So in regards to testing, you said there's blood draws, you said there's saliva, you said there's urine. Is there, for any of those trace minerals, do you know any ones which is definitely maybe a no-go? Like, for example, don't test your zinc with saliva, or don't test is there any of them, or certain ones which is best to test a certain way?
Yeah, there are certain ones that you test using blood. Most minerals you can test using blood, actually. But some people might, if it's a specific mineral, zinc, as an example, you don't even have to do a blood test for zinc to determine whether or not you're deficient. There's a simple zinc test that you can do because zinc affects your taste. If you buy the zinc liquid from a store, you can actually swish it around in your mouth. And if it has a really repulsive metallic taste, then you know your zinc levels are good. If it tastes like water, which it does taste like water for quite a few people, it means you're zinc deficient.
I love doing that test to my patients.
You do,
Absolutely
right?
love doing that.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm
I've
like,
done it. I've done it with taste like water before.
they're like, what does it taste like? I'm like, I don't know. You have to tell me. I don't know. And I sit there and either they're running, like they can't deal, which is very rare,
Yeah.
or they're
Yeah.
like, nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, okay, definitely zinc deficient. There you go. I love doing that test. It's such a good little non-invasive,
Exactly.
quick, low cost test.
Yeah, and everybody can do it. You don't. So there are other tests that are not invasive that you can do. I know there's some wellness places that use saliva more than others. I don't know how accurate some of these saliva tests are though. I just go in twice a year and get my blood work done. And the amino acids, I know the urine they test from that, but I just kind of give my vowels and get the results back twice a year to see if I'm doing okay.
So you do yours twice a year. Is that something that you would recommend for everyone or certain individuals, or what's your thoughts on that?
My lifestyle, I guess it depends on your lifestyle.
Mm.
If it's a period of time when I have a ton of trials to do, I suspect that I'm going to run through my vitamin Bs quite a lot, more so than the average person. So because I'm aware of that, I will perhaps test my, like for the stress vitamins a little bit more so that I can replace it. Uh, instead of twice a year, I probably do 3 times a year. If I don't have a bunch of things going on, I sometimes I do golf tournaments. So if I'm not overly active, doing a bunch of tournaments or whatever, then I probably would only test it like once a year, once or twice a year at most. So it depends on what I'm doing. That's if I anticipate that the energy stores are going to be utilized more, then I'll test it a little bit more.
Yeah, you're aware of your body. And I guess some individuals listening are like, I have not drawn my blood or looked at anything for 3-4 years. And this is a little wake-up call and a little sign to say, maybe it's time.
Yeah. No, it's not painful. It really isn't. If you have a good phlebotomist that your doctor works with, it really is not that big of a deal because the information that you gain from doing that is so invaluable. It keeps you out of ER.
No, you're right, 100%. And going to ER definitely depletes all your minerals and vitamins.
That too, I forgot about that. Yes, that is so true.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, going to the hospital.
Yeah.
As in going to the ER, what happens when you go to your immune system needs to be working overtime. I think, especially with COVID out now, your immune system needs to be extremely good when you go into a hospital, because if it's not, you're likely to be confronted with a bunch of viruses, a bunch of bacteria that you've never confronted in your life. You would ordinarily not confront at home. And it's up to your body to be able to fight that. And many times when you walk into the ER, your immune system is not the most optimal, because you're going in because you're feeling sick or because maybe you had an accident. And, depending on how well you are despite the accident, will determine how good you do or recover. So, and once you get out of, ER, it's important that you know that your immune system went through a huge test while you're there, and that you need to, at that point, determine how best to get it back in tip-top shape and not just keep going on with life as usual.
Yeah, 100%. I'm
So
so glad that you touched upon that. And I even, just talk about it and I say, even the lights, the non-circulation of air, the non-being exposed to sunlight, the constant high energy of people being stressed, all that affects you and affects your immune system dramatically. So if you can stay away from it, and I know sometimes accidents and things happen, but if we can stay away from hospitals and ERs, that's a goal. That should be like a goal. And if you've achieved that every
exactly.
year, tick.
In fact, my goal is to, except for an accident, like if it's, heaven forbid, if it's a motor vehicle accident, or maybe you get bitten by a dog or a snake or whatever, except for those things, that you don't control, it shouldn't be too difficult to stay out of ER if we're being proactive about our health. And so the more you're proactive or the more preventive health you practice, it increases your likelihood of staying out of the hospital.
Yeah, I love that 100%. And all those trace minerals, if they're all balanced, they're going to help you stay away from the ER.
Of course, of course, of course, of course, of
I
course.
love that. So I've heard you say that you can't get healthier without accurate health information, and you said that at the start. So where would be a place that individuals can get accurate information from? Because we're bombarded with information these days everywhere. Everywhere we look, there's health information. So what is an accurate place, or what is a good place to go to?
Sure. So when I say accurate health information, it needs to be health information without a bias. Uh, you need to get health information from places where they're not trying to sell you something. They need to get their source of information needs to be from a reputable source. For example, studies that are done by reputable universities or by government agencies without an agenda. Those
When does
are
that happen? Where do you get these?
that's what we try to do on our website at phlabs.org. Is that it's a nonprofit founded just to provide health information.
What was the website again? Can you say that again?
phlabs.org, Proactive Health Labs, phlabs.org.
Beautiful.
And what we try and do each week is to identify issues that most consumers should know about and identify the relevant studies that were done or most recent study that was done to support whatever. For example, if we're saying sugar is bad for you, are there some studies that came out that show that why sugar is bad, or how does sugar affect you, why you should limit the amount of sugar you eat, etc. Things that are related to nutrition or lifestyle that are supported by credible evidence, scientific evidence. Because there's so much, you're correct, there's so much information out there that you don't know what's credible from what's not credible, and why somebody's saying CBD is great for you. Maybe they're selling CBD and they're saying that their particular brand is good. We don't have a brand that we're selling. What we do recommend when you're taking vitamins or supplements is that you identify a credible brand that we're supported by research, by physicians who are trained or scientists who are trained to be accountable to the public about the products that they put into these supplements. So we have supplements that we recommend, not because we're getting any money from it, but because we know that the supplements were being formulated by scientists.
Yeah.
So that as a consumer, this is information that we need to know before we make decisions to purchase or before we research what it is that we're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. And be accountable. That's a huge word, and research backed, and make sure that the things that you are taking in, what that information is, or that supplement or that food, where it is from, what is it doing to you. The same as medication. I'm not anti-medication pharmaceuticals. They're there for a reason, but what is it doing and what is it not doing? So that's a key point there. I love that. So going back to trace minerals. So if an individual so we spoke about a little bit, we spoke about fatigue, but what could be overall some some signs and symptoms an individual may be feeling. So then they should get tested. And then once they get tested, they can hopefully, get on a roll wheel and get a little bit better, get to optimal health. What would be some signs and symptoms an individual may come across and may feel if they're low in those trace minerals that we spoke about, like iron, calcium, iodine, selenium, and so forth?
Sure. So give an example. If you're deficient in iodine, as an example, you could have unexplained weight gain. And as you know, the internet is full of suggestions as to how to lose weight, but you don't see anybody talking about testing for minerals to see if maybe a mineral deficiency is what could be causing your inability to lose weight. So an unexplained weight gain, for example, if you're feeling weak or tired, if you have thyroid issues. I don't know if you know some people who have a large goiter at their neck, or sometimes you see their neck area is a little bit larger than normal. That could be a symptom that they should be concerned about, and it's probably related to some kind of iodine deficiency. So those are some of the symptoms that you can look for. Impaired immune function, for example, is another issue that could implicate zinc deficiencies. If you're impotent, if you have hair loss, if you have loss of smell. Some people have difficulty smelling things. I was working out with my trainer yesterday. And we were hiking, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I think I smell a dead animal." And she said, "What? I don't smell anything." I said, "Yeah, it's really, we need to get out of this area. I do smell something." I said, "I don't know, Joy, I didn't smell anything." I said, "You need to go get your zinc tested." Levels tested. It literally happened yesterday. And then when we were walking up the stairs, she said, "I kind of smell something lightly in the air." I said, "Something lightly in the air?" It was stink. Yes, I understand. But just think, simple everyday symptoms like that could suggest that you have a deficiency that needs to be addressed. And don't take symptoms lightly. If you feel exhausted, or if you're losing your hair, if you can't smell, if you're losing weight for no reason or gaining weight for no reason, if you injure yourself and you notice the wound isn't getting better quickly, then there might be some kind of mineral deficiency or trace mineral deficiency that you have that's causing these things, or nutrient deficiency in general that's causing these issues. You might want to test to see what it is, because you don't want to wait until it becomes a bigger issue before you do something. And at that point, it might be too late, because remember, it's one thing, we talk about preventive health, but once your health gets to a point where we have neglected it all these years, then things like cancer show up. At that point, it's too late to talk about preventive health. At that point, you're talking about surgery or medications. So, if we can avoid these issues and not wait until it turns into a bigger issue that you can't now prevent, then it behooves us to do so, and just be aware of what we can do, and don't take these symptoms or little things lightly. Do something about it early.
Yeah, we tend to go, "Oh, it'll go away tomorrow," and then it's still there, and it's still there. "Oh, it'll heal itself, it'll get better." And sometimes it does, but think about it. Do you need to get tested and check what your trace minerals are? What is it at? What can you do? Are you going through, like you said, a trial? Are you going through a stressful time at business where your B vitamins are gonna get used up so quickly? So then you get tested and make sure that you compensate with food, with supplements, whatever it needs to be. That's absolutely amazing. I love that. Absolutely love that. So to sum it all up, before we finish off, what would be some practical tips for the audience to incorporate to ensure that they get and absorb all their trace minerals? I know we spoke about it a little bit, but if you could just sum it up, what the audience can do now after this podcast to make sure that they have all their trace minerals.
Well, obviously, one of the big things that I talk about is testing. That's the biggest issue. Um, you won't know that you're deficient in it unless you test for it. The other thing that that the audience can do is to make sure that when they're cooking their food, that they use the correct cooking methods. And if you eat out a lot, um, and it's great to eat out. I support restaurants, but I do it more as the exception rather than the rule. I think it's important to cook mostly at home, and then you'll know that your cooking methods aren't destroying the minerals in your food or the nutrients in your food. Because how do you know exactly what you're eating if you don't do it yourself or you didn't supervise it yourself? So that's really something that I stress, that it's like many of us should just learn how to cook. Really, or just be aware of how the food is prepared if we really are concerned about optimal health, to
Yeah.
ensure you're eating the most nutritious meals as possible. So those are just some of the things. I also stress going to farmers markets. I support farmers markets here in the States, yeah, because many times you can find, nutritious food there that's not been overly processed, or that's healthier for you in the long run. But those are just some of the things. Educate yourself. It goes back to education. Uh, the best thing we can do for ourselves as consumers is just to be aware of our own bodies. Remember that each of us is different. I'm not the same as you. I don't process food the same as you. There's not a one size fit all for staying healthy. What it takes to keep me healthy might be a little bit different than what it takes somebody to keep somebody else healthy. And if you're aware of that, you'll take a more active role in making sure that you know your body well enough to be able to explain your issues to your medical, professional, and not assume that he he already or she already has the answer. So education is a big part of staying healthy, and knowing what nutrients you need and what trace minerals you need.
Yeah, I love that. Education, testing, eating at home, supporting the farmers. I love all of that. And I try to do all of that as much as I can and possibly can. And when you make your like the whole process of cooking activates your brain, your stomach is like food's coming, you start salivating, you're cutting it, you start smelling it, all that's all medicine in itself. That's all healing, that's all medicine. And then you sit there and you watch and you've created something beautiful that's going to feed your insights. Like that is beautiful. So I think that's very important. And going back to, home cooking and enjoying the food and being creative in that field. So to finish off, I ask all my guests, as this is a natural health podcast, what is your best kept natural health hack that you may do every day, once a year, once a month? What's something that you do to keep optimal health, Joy?
One of the things that I do every day is, before going to bed each night, I'll take a soak in some form of magnesium or mineral bath. And what it does is, if I had an overactive day, really prevents me from having aches and pains. But it also relaxes me. I don't know, I can't tell you the physiological changes exactly what those are, but it makes me sleep better. It relaxes me. I feel what if I was stressed out during the day, when I hit the sack, I'm totally relaxed, and I have no issue sleeping. So I've been doing that for the last 5 years, literally the last 5 years, to the point that if I go somewhere and there's not a bath, I'm upset.
I love it. I love it. That's an absolutely amazing little hack, and it just
Yeah,
closes the day.
yeah, it works. It works. If you have difficulty sleeping, for example, I'll be honest. I have no trouble sleeping. I'll sleep for 6 to 8 hours. no problem. I have no problems falling asleep, no issues with sleeping. And I don't have to take medications to go to sleep. Never have.
Yeah. And that's rare, isn't it, these days? Very rare.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I do quite a bit. The other thing that, and I talked about that earlier on, is that magnesium is literally my favorite nutrient because in my mind, it got me through menopause. On top of staying balanced, but I think that was the biggest issue in terms of staying relaxed and focused, and that plus the B vitamins, but I think more so magnesium. I have no issues with constipation, which is many people, have an issue with nothing. So in terms of a hack, I would say that too is a big part of my lifestyle.
Take magnesium, soak in magnesium, everything magnesium. I love it. So if you got anything from this podcast, if you want to live long, get through menopause, get through trials, have an amazing business, take magnesium. But first test what your magnesium level is so then you know how much to take. Exactly. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the Natural Health Podcast, Joy. Really, really appreciate your time, your knowledge, all the valuable information that you shared with us about trace minerals. And I think the audience has a better idea now of what trace minerals are and how to ensure that they're balanced in their body.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure, and you were absolutely delighted to talk to.
Thank you so much. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. The content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in the circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.